Hey guys, hoping all is well with everybody. In this video, we're going to be continuing the read-along of The Secret Zoo by Brian Chick. And the last time we finished off, we completed reading chapter 42. So today we'll be starting with chapter 43. As always, please feel free to follow along, and I'll be showing you any pictures as we come across them. Chapter 43, More Secrets of the Secret Zoo. Are you certain? Noah asked. Are you certain she's here? No, Noah, I'm afraid not. Mr. Darby straightened his beaded sunglasses. I need to show you something. Follow me. As we walk, I'll tell you what we know. Start with the Sasquatches, Ellis said as they headed down the street. What are they? Creatures trapped between humankind and animal kind, part human and part ape. They embody the worst of man and the worst of animal. Sasquatches once existed in the outside world. Your world. Wait a minute. Are you talking about Bigfoot? Sasquatches have been called many names. But Bigfoot's not real, Ellis said. He's a myth. Bigfoot may be a myth, but the Sasquatches are real, I assure you. They once existed in small numbers in the outside world. They remained hidden to protect their species and lived in vastly different regions of the earth. Antarctica, the Himalayas, even the jungles of South America. Sasquatches adapt easily to different climates, and they are good at survival. Over the course of history, however, their isolation caused their numbers to diminish, almost to the point of extinction. That is why 87 years ago, the Secret Society began a 2-year expedition to locate as many Sasquatches as possible. We were able to track down nearly 3 dozen. We brought them here. That was no easy feat, mind you, to guard them from extinction. What happened? Richie asked. I mean, things obviously turned bad. What happened is well documented in many texts, lining the shelves in the library of the Secret Society. I've read them all. With an aim toward brevity, I'll spare you most of the details now. Richie nodded, and the scouts silently waited for more. The Sasquatches were unruly. Within days, they escaped into isolated parts of random sectors. We decided to give the Sasquatches the isolation they preferred. They are truly creatures of the shadows. Richie said, That's why we never seen them in our own world, the outside. Yes, though I'm not sure they even exist in the outside any longer. We monitor Sasquatch activity, and we haven't had a real sighting in 30 years. What happened after that? For years, the Sasquatches hid in the sectors. Just when many of us in the secret society thought they had died off, they were spotted. Some considered this good news. We thought they might be ready to rejoin our society. We were terribly wrong. One night, the Sasquatches stormed the city's species and attacked us. Hundreds of members perished that night, animal and people alike. Countless buildings were destroyed. It was Secret Zoo's darkest moment. What did you do? Ella asked. The inevitable. We fought back. We pushed them out of the city and drove them into a single sector. As Mr. Darby finished his sentence, the group came to a wall covered by velvet curtains. The old man touched the folds, sending a ripple across them. This is the sector. This, I'm afraid, is where we barricaded the Sasquatches. This is the entrance to the dark lands. Noah inspected the curtains. Once upon a time they had been white, but now they were stained yellow and dotted with ugly brown spots. Some of the fabric was matted. Several patches were flimsy and almost threadbare. The curtains seemed to be decaying, as if badness of the darklands were rotting them away. Noah peered behind the folds. The wall was made of ordinary bricks. Bricks hold them back? Noah asked. The magic of the curtains is what binds the bricks and seals the darklands. But what about the other passage? Richie asked. The passage that leads to our world. The sector used to open at the elephant exhibit, but we closed it off. That doesn't make sense, Noah said. If the darklands are sealed off, how did Megan get in? Well, it's difficult for humans to travel between the city zoo and the secret zoo. The portals between the sectors and the zoo exhibits are designed for animals, not humans. Our crossers have had a dreadful time traveling back and forth. The night your sister disappeared, she was spotted in creepy critters. Do you know the Chamber of Lights? The scouts nodded. It's one of our new projects. The Chamber of Lights is still under construction, and it is in early testing phase. It's meant to be a quick gateway from the secret zoo to any sector of the city zoo to any sector of the secret zoo. At this point, it's not reliable. It's not even safe. Anyway, Somehow Megan discovered the magic of the Chamber of Lights, and she used it to cross into the secret zoo. The frogs found 3 pages of her journal inside the chamber, the 3 pages that the animals secretly delivered to you. Though we believe Megan made it inside the secret zoo, we've never been able to locate her. This is precisely why many think she crossed into the Darklands. You see, if the Chamber of Lights isn't used correctly, any sector of the secret zoo could be at the other end of the crossing. Why didn't you tell my family about this? Noah asked. You should have told us. Many of us wanted to, but that would have meant exposing our secrets. It would have been too dangerous for us, too dangerous for the world. Why the world? Ella asked. Tank said the same thing, and I... Mr. Darby interrupted her. There is a man who walks in the shadows, who literally draws breath from the shadows. Some claim he's a myth, a legend, but I believe he is trying to get into our secret zoo, trying to get near the source of our power and magic. And I believe that if he gets to it... Mr. Darby looked at the ground and stroked his scraggly beard. I can't even think of it. But what is he? Ella could barely contain herself. Mr. Darby raised his hand sharply and said, That's enough about him for now. It chills me to the bone even to think of him. Besides, he is a subject best left for another time, a time where there is more time. Noah brought the subject back to Megan. But you only think Megan's inside the Darklands. You're not sure? Yes, that's the main reason that the secret society hasn't gone in after her. If we bring down this wall, the Sasquatches might escape. That is, if the Sasquatches are even in there. More than 80 years have passed since we last saw them, and we're not sure whether they have survived. We are uncertain about so many things. Uncertainty is the reason that we've done nothing. That's crazy, Noah cried. You can't just give up on Megan. No one has given up. Since her disappearance, endless thoughts and discussions have been about Megan. Many members of our society will be relieved that the gifted found a way to involve the 3 of you. The who? Al asked. Gifted? Who are they? Animals that seem, in some regards, almost humans. Greater intelligence, awareness, compassion, higher evolutionary characteristics, I suppose you could say. You've met a few already. Blizzard, Marlowe, Little Bighorn, some of our brightest. In our world, they're natural leaders, often bridging the gap between us and the animals. It's hard to imagine where we'd be without them. Ella said, but all the animals seem smart. Mr. Darby nodded. Most are, yes. It so happens that some are more capable than others. What changed them? Richie asked. The magic? In part, Mr. Darby said, but some think that they're advancing because we treat them as equals. Noah didn't care about the gifteds. He cared about Megan, and he shifted the conversation back to her. We need to get inside the Darklands. There may be only a slight chance that Megan's in there, but we need to find out for sure. I believe you're right, Mr. Darby said. And now that the 3 of you are here, the members of the Secret Council have called an emergency meeting to plot a course of action. That's where all these animals are headed, and that's where we need to be. Mr. Darby turned abruptly into a winding alley. As he passed between a tower and a giant moss-covered tree, he said, Come, follow me, Action Scouts. We don't want to be late. Late for what? Ella called as they raced after the old man. Without looking back, Mr. Darby replied, You'll see, Ella. You'll see. As they headed down the alley, they heard an indistinct rumble. With each step forward, the noise grew louder until it engulfed and overwhelmed them. Chapter 44. The Scouts Take Center Stage. When the Scouts stepped out of the alley, they found themselves on the other side of the city. The area was so packed with animals that moving forward was difficult. Animals filled the streets, the sidewalks, the alleyways. They were everywhere. Monkeys swung from tree limbs, dangled from balconies, and rode on other animals. Reptiles clung to the sides of buildings. Birds were perched on trees, rooftops, awnings, and electrical wires. When the animals saw the Scouts, they moved aside. Some squirmed, some flew, and some hopped to allow them passage. The path led to a low wooden stage, where a group of people wearing trench coats sat in a wide, pillowed chairs. The Secret Council. Noah found it interesting that Mr. Darby was the only member whose coat was made of velvet. Animals affectionately moved across the secret council. Monkeys jumped across their laps, snakes slithered across their shoes, and lizards climbed up on their backs. But the council members barely seemed to notice. Mr. Darby's beard danced as you turned to face his guests. Come, come, he said, and he stepped onto the path. The three children advanced slowly through the crowd. Excited by their arrival, the animals erupted in a commotion, flapping their wings, stomping their paws, and clomping in their hooves. Grunts and screeches echoed across the city of species. The noise was deafening. Continuously waving to greet the crowd, Mr. Darby led the scouts and the animal friends to the stage. They climbed up and strode to the middle of the secret council, settled in their seats of honor. Mr. Darby turned toward the spectacular congregation, and an eerie quiet washed over the streets. He cleared his throat. Esteemed members of our secret council and members of our secret society, as most of you undoubtedly know, today we have unexpected visitors in our city, extremely important visitors. I have called this emergency session of the council to hear your voice in the matter of Megan's situation. But first, let me say a few words. For 15 minutes, Mr. Darby reviewed the Megan situation, including the facts about her disappearance, the theories regarding her whereabouts, the likelihood of saving her, and the possible dangers in attempting a rescue. From start to finish, the Action Scouts gazed at the dreamlike crowd of animals and people. At the end of his speech, Mr. Darby said, Does anyone wish to ask questions or make statements? An enormous man with a stomach as round as a beach ball pushed to the front of the crowd and threw himself against the stage. I'd like to hear from the boy. The boy, said Mr. Darby. That one, the man said. He shook his oversized finger up at Noah. It looked like a trembling hot dog. The one who claims relation to the girl. Mr. Darby leaned close to Noah and grinned. Are you the one who claims relation to the girl? He whispered. Too frightened to speak, Noah simply looked at Mr. Darby. Mr. Darby stepped aside to give Noah and the huge man a clear view of each other. A hush fell over the city of species. The man stuffed his big fingers into his pockets and said, Young man, do you understand how dangerous it is for you to be here? I think so, Noah replied. Do you understand what your presence means? He asked. Do you understand what your sister has done? Do you realize how she has divided this great society? The man's voice rumbled. Yes, I think Mr. Darby explained. You think your sister is in the Darklands. What proof do you have? We need proof, he demanded. Noah caught sight of Blizzard on the stage. Noah wasn't the only one who didn't like the way this man was acting. The polar bear looked ready to lunge at the man and take a healthy bite of his rear end. I don't have any proof, sir, but the animals found her notes and you don't have proof. You don't have proof, and yet you stand here before me, before all of us in the city of species, and ask us to open our homeland, our haven and shelter, to the threat of the Darklands. I guess so. I mean, no. Noah paused for a moment and added, I don't know. You don't know. The man shook his head disapprovingly. You don't know. Noah stood dumbfounded, clutching his hands. He felt dreadfully small and insignificant. The man turned toward the secret council. This young man would like us to open our community, our homes, our streets, and our schools to the dangers of the Darklands. Why? Because he has a hunch that his sister might be in there. Noah had no idea what to say. Tears welled up in his eyes. Ella jumped forward and shouted, Watch it, Tubby. Don't you talk to my friend like that. Her ponytail and the fluffy mounds of her earmuffs bounced on her head. Young lady, the man said, I'm still talking, Ella interrupted. Do you know who we are? We're the Action Scouts. Nobody talks to us like that. The Action Scouts, the man said mockingly. Why, of course. We're dealing with the Action Scouts. Why'd I'd simply forgotten. He shrugged his shoulders and rolled his eyes. Nervous chuckles rippled through the council. Don't you... Noah took Ella's arm, and their eyes met for a moment. Feeding off Ella's support, Noah found himself taking 3 steps toward the man. If Megan's not in the Darklands, then where is she? The animals and creepy critters, they saw her go into the Chamber of Lights and then disappear. Mr. Darby told us so. If you can't find her anywhere in the secret zoo, then where else can she be? The man raised one eyebrow and grimaced. He knew Noah had a good point. She's in the Darklands, and you know it. You're just afraid of what that means. The man parted his lips to say something, but Noah went on before he could speak. My sister's gone, he cried. Do you understand what that's done to my home, to my community? Do you know how many people I've never even met, have been crushed by her disappearance? I'm not trying to put anyone in danger, not at all. I'm only asking the Secret Society to help me find my sister, help me bring her home. Noah paused. He searched for some powerful words to influence the crowd, but he couldn't. But he could think of none. What came out instead was the simple truth. I miss her. A hush swept across the council. The crowd became still. Even the monkeys stopped chattering. Mr. Darby touched the boy's shoulder and said, Thank you, Noah. He turned back to the enormous congregation. I believe now would be a good time to put this to a vote. All those in favor of opening the Darklands, let us hear from you. The city erupted with noise and commotion. Chimpanzees screeched and swung through the trees. Birds squawked and flew through the air. Elephants trumpeted and pounded their feet. Alligators hissed and clanked their tails against signposts. Near a stage, a giraffe hoisted its long neck into the air with 3 prairie dogs on its head so their squeaky barks could be heard. Ella and Richie ran to Noah and hugged him. When the clamor faded, Mr. Darby turned to the people seated out on stage and said, And who in the Secret Council is in favor of advancing into the Darklands? Everyone on stage raised a hand. Well, Action Scouts, said Mr. Darby, I think the decision has been made. The scouts cheered and exchanged high fives. Give me 1 hour to finalize the logistics of Operation Wrecking Crew and Rescue, Mr. Darby said as he walked past the council to leave the stage. Operation Wrecking Crew and Rescue, exclaimed a council member. We've never discussed such a plan. Who said the council would discuss it? Mr. Darby called out. One must occasionally think for oneself, yes? He directed his gaze intently at the scouts and said, By the way, there's one thing I want the 3 of you to know, to really understand. Yes, said Ella. Even if Megan is in the Darklands, there's no guarantee that we'll bring her out. You understand this, right? The scouts nodded. You should also know, he warned, that we ourselves might never make it out of there. You need to truly understand this. If the Sasquatches have survived, there's a formidable chance that many of us will not. The scouts huddled together, and for the first time they looked afraid. Then they all nodded at once. Good. Mr. Darby spun around. Let us not waste any more time. I'll round up my crew. Your crew? The scouts chimed. You'll see, scouts, Mr. Darby said. You'll see. And as we'll end the video there, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And in our next video, which I hope to see you guys there, is going to be the continuation of the read-along of the Secret Zoo, starting with chapter 45. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. And as always, please take good care of yourselves.